Hello, my name is Pedro Studio, and this is detailing my self directed learning for my Google Level 1 educational journey. As you can see, I am going to start with trying to achieve or explain what my journey was in achieving my Level 1 for Google certification. When I started this module 2 with Dr. Watkins and looked at the course schedule, I felt pretty confident that I would execute all the assignments and projects. In reading the explanations for all the projects, I thought I had a hand on how I would approach Project 2 and connect it to my Project 3. Project 2 was a plan for how you, as an individual, would complete a certification in what educational platform you chose to challenge. I must admit that I felt that I had a good grasp of what I was going to do. At the weekly meetings that Dr. Watkins hosts, she directed us to be mindful of our approach to these certifications. I researched a timeline and made sure to have my timeline done by November 27th, a full week ahead of when this project was needed to be completed. What I did not take into account was the depth of the training. The training pieces were not just simple multiple choice. Each unit had subunits that required viewing of videos, hands on activities, and careful study. For example, when questions were asked of me, some of the questions had several correct answer choices. In other words, the questions were in depth. Some of the questions had multiple correct answers that needed to be selected. As a result, my time management became my biggest obstacle. I realized that my timeline plan would not allow me to finish all the units in time and prove sufficient for in depth study. My biggest fault was ignorance of the total time of research required to navigate the exam successfully. As I navigated to the training, I realized how much I didn't know. There were many instances where I failed the reviews at the end of the session. I must have retaken the reviews at least 3 times by the time I finally passed. I admit that the apps that I regularly use daily, such as Google, Gmail, Google Forms, and Google Docs, would prove to be a piece of cake when I start the fundamentals training. How could I not know the inner working of these apps? I've used them for several years. Indeed, there could be no information I hadn't seen or did not know of due to my years of using these applications. That form of thinking proved to be foolhardy. There was nothing fun about the fundamentals of training I was going through. While proving useful study guides, I was shocked to know how much information and nuance all the Google apps have, and I had no clue it was even there. So you would assume I would take more time to study and figure out a way for some more time to study to pass this exam successfully. You would have assumed incorrectly, for I had another obstacle that proved to be just as significant. Besides the long study guides, I also needed to complete the exam before the due date of December 6th. So I did what most people do in that situation. I made it worse by attempting to do the exam, banking that there was no way that the exam would be as in depth as the study guides for the exam, and that I, as a teacher, had been using these apps for a number of years, felt confident that I could challenge the exam and pass it. The study guides proved to be prophetic. While taking the exam, I started to realize how underprepared I was for this exam. I was unsure of the answers I was selecting, and my Mount Everest to be proved to be when the exam asked me to manipulate several functions on a Google sheet. I could not figure out how to correctly use the functions it asked of me to use on the Google sheet. I could not figure it out. So out of frustration, I went ahead and closed the window to my exam. I already know that I did not pass the exam, and I'm also disappointed that I could not successfully challenge the exam. I don't need physical confirmation to know this. I could not complete the exam is proof enough. However, I'll use this failure as a reminder of what not to do and continue on the path to becoming a level 1 Google certified teacher. But this statement allows me to segue what lessons I have learned from this experience. In the first lesson, one must do in depth research on the amount of time it takes to study and be successful when taking this particular exam. Secondly, never assume that just because you use something regularly, it makes you a competent user. And third, and this reason speaks to attitude and forethought. Do not be hasty in your decision making. I quit my exam and didn't even allow myself to see what the rest of the exam would be like. which would have proved invaluable information for the next time I take this exam. Last, I plan on using this experience not as negative, but as a motivation to do better the next time. All this leads me to my future intentions. One might say future goals. It is my intention to study deliberately and with greater attention to the time required of me to pass and receive my Google Level 1 certification. If given the chance, I would like to help my colleagues develop materials that could help their students be further successful in their classes. And finally, I intend to use this as a springboard to other certifications, with the goal of one day becoming a Google certified trainer. Thank you so much, and this was my journey for my level 1 Google certification.